Hello, we welcome you to today's Bible study session on David and Goliath, an important interaction between David and a Philistine champion. The Philistines and Israel have set up for war. They were occupying a particular position that was of strategic importance to them. And before they could start any battle, this monster of a man, giant of a man, appeared and challenged the Israelis to an individual battle. He asked them to bring out somebody and let the battle be between him and that person, instead of between the Israeli army and the Palestinian and the Philistine army. We will learn a lot about David from this interaction. We will learn that David was spiritually close to God and has what appears to be a clear understanding of why God created human beings and how God intended for human beings to interact with each other and interact with Him. We will see especially in his confrontation with Goliath, that he used this understanding very well. He invoked the power of God to essentially convert what was a weapon usually used against small animals, and to convert it to something that became a lethal weapon for somebody that, a giant and dressed in military regalia with all the protection you can get. But David was able to kill this man with a shepherd's sling and stone. So we'll look at the interactions that occurred before when this happened. Everything we're going to learn today is from 1 Samuel chapter 17. Let's begin with the setup for battle. The Philistines and the Israelites were set up to fight a battle. They were occupying two hills, one hill occupied by the Israelis and the other hill occupied by the Philistines, and there was a valley between them. And this was the setup before Goliath came in. Let us look at this in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 1 to 3.
1 Samuel chapter 17. Now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at the Succoth in Judah. They pitched camp in Ephes Dammim, between Succoth and Azekah. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the Valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them.
Well, as soon as they settled down, this giant of a man came out. The Philistine champion, they called him, his name was Goliath. He came out and challenged the Israelites. We're going to read about this. We're going to read two passages. The first passage describes his future, describes why this man would strike fear into anybody. Then the second passage would describe his challenge to the Israeli army. The first passage, 1 Samuel 17, verses 4 to 11.
1 Samuel chapter 17. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out from the Philistine camp. He was over 9 feet tall. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor, of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went ahead of him.
Well, so that's the description of this man. Is basically a giant. He was dressed in the best armor that you can find. He was protected all over his body. He had a spear that weighed what translates into 16 pounds. So just the point of the spear. So this man stood up and challenged the Israeli army. He said, look, there is no point your army fighting our army. Just send out one person. You are champion. Select your champion. Let me fight with him. If I beat him, then we've defeated you people and you will become our subjects. If he beats me, then you people have defeated us and we will become your subjects. And this man was so imposing, so huge, and so that the Israeli soldiers were terrified of him. Saul, the leader, the commander, was terrified. They all went into hiding each time Goliath came. And he did this in the morning and in the evening for about 40 days. So this was real terror. Let us read about his challenge. 1 Samuel 17 verses 4 to 11, now continuing from verse 8.
From verse 8. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and you are not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Then the Philistine said, "This day I defy the ranks of Israel. Give me a man, and let us fight each other." On hearing the Philistine's words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified.
Yes, Saul and all the Israelites were terrified, and they lived under this terror for 40 days. But let's step back and look at David at this time. Remember, David had joined the service of Saul as a harp player and was eventually appointed as one of the armor bearers. But he still has responsibilities at home, and he remained conscious of his responsibilities and took care of them because their father has flocks and they needed to take care of this flock. Since his brothers, his senior brothers, 3 of them were part of Saul's army, those that had gone out to fight the Philistines and were being terrorized by Goliath. And then the other people, of course, had other things to do, were not told in the Bible. But David was the person that took care of the flock in the field, the sheep and goat and all the animals that their father had. So, and he went back from Saul to his father, from his Saul's house to his father's house to tend the sheep. If you think about this, today, some of our young people today that get this assignment will quickly say, "Oh, I've been appointed this and that under Saul, so I cannot handle this sheep anymore. Go hire a shepherd. Find there are shepherds going around that you can get for hire to take care of the sheep." But David didn't do that. He remained responsible and to the sheep and went back and forth. Then on this, during the war going on one evening, his father called him and said, "Look, I would like you to go to the war front to check on your brothers." First of all, let us look at David's responsibility at home, how he moved back and forth between Saul's house and the field where he tended sheep. 1 Samuel 17, verse 12.
1 Samuel chapter 17. Now David was the son of a Euphorite named Jesse, who was from Bethlehem in Judah. Jesse had 8 sons, and in Saul's time he was old and well advanced in years. Jesse's 3 oldest sons had followed Saul to the war. The first one was Eliab, the second Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest. The 3 oldest followed Saul. But David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's sheep at Bethlehem.
So Jesse called their father. He called David one night and said, I would like you to take supplies to your brothers and find out how they are doing. So he prepared supplies for him to prepare some gifts for their commanders, for their commander, and said, okay, you take off and go and check on them. The following day, David left in the morning, but before he left, he made an arrangement. He got a shepherd to take care of their sheep. Then he went to the field and met with his brothers. And it was while he was talking with his brothers that he experienced the one episode of Goliath's defiance of the Israeli army. David had this, but what struck him, what really got him dismayed, was that the Israeli army, the Israeli soldiers were terrified. As soon as they heard Goliath's voice, they were frightened and they went into hiding. David was not happy about this at all, and we can read about his encounter with Goliath. The first encounter with Goliath in verses 17 to 24 of our chapter 17, 1 Samuel.
Now Jesse said to his son David, take this ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers and hurry to their camp. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are and bring back some assurance from them. They are with Saul and all the men of Israel in the Valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines. Early in the morning, David left the flock with his shepherd, loaded up and set out, as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going out to battle to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines facing each other. David left his things with the keeper of supplies and ran to the battle lines and greeted his brothers. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance, and David heard it. When the Israelites saw the man, they all ran from him in great fear.
Yes, David was dismayed when he noticed these two things. First of all, he had this man defying the Israeli army. Second, he saw that the Israeli army was frightened by this man, that they were afraid of him. So David felt really bad, and he became, these two things motivated him. He decided that something has to be done. They were not going to let this man, in his words, defy the army of the living God and get away with it. So David was motivated to fight, to go and fight Goliath. Remember, this is really a boy. He really wasn't old enough to become one of the soldiers. I mean, he could go with them as an armor bearer or something like that, but not the type of person to go and confront such a giant of a man, and that somebody that apparently was a terror to all the other soldiers. But he realized that when there was an award that Saul promised, and we'll read about that, he said, whoever will kill this man, will get certain favors. His family will be exempted from taxes, and he will be given one of Saul's daughters to marry. And David was actually attracted by this. But more important is that he was really, he was annoyed. He was very unhappy that the Israeli army is supposed to be God's army, and yet this man comes, defies them, insults them, challenges them, throws all sorts of insults at them, and he gets away with it, and he was getting away with it. So he was determined that this man cannot defy the army of the living God as he saw it and get away with it. that something had to be done about it. Then he carried the same message to the soldiers. Remember, this somebody younger than too young to be one of the soldiers, in fact. But he was now the person trying to motivate them, trying to tell them and say, have you forgotten that you are the army of the living God? You know, this man, who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the army of the living God and get away with it. So he was talking himself up to it, but at the same time encouraging, trying to motivate the other people to recognize that this is a battle to fight and not one to run away from. Let us read from the Word of God, 1 Samuel 17, verses 25 and 26.
Now the Israelites had been saying, "Do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give him his daughter in marriage and will exempt his father's family from taxes in Israel." David asked the man standing near him, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?"
Yes, and he wanted to remove his disgrace from Israel. That's the way he described it. And then said, look, this man is a Philistine. He is an unclean person, uncircumcised. The Jews at that time, whoever was not circumcised, they considered unclean, which means the person was a lower person, a lower human being relative to them. So how can they let this unclean man, this uncircumcised, come out, defy them, and they forget that they are the army of the living God, and this man does this and this, they're letting him get away with it. So David said, somebody has to remove this disgrace from Israel and prevent this uncircumcised Philistine from defying the army of the living God. So there are two things there. One is his patriotism, the fact that he sees Israel as the Israeli army as the special army of God, that God had a special relationship with them, and God has a special relationship with Israel. Remember the promise to Abraham and how their history that we studied under our study of the Jacob's family. So there is that special bond, and of course he had just led them out of Egypt. We didn't study this. So there is that special bond between Israel and God, and David knew this, and he was appealing to that, trying to remind people that they have a special relationship with God, and that they can call on this relationship to have God fight their battle for them. They need to have, and how they do that is they need to have faith in God. They need to remember that God fights their battles, and that they should not be afraid of this man that is insulting them. Well, remember, he was a small boy. He had 3 brothers in the army, and one of them actually heard what he was saying and became annoyed. And why was this small boy here talking about, trying to talk people up? And he said some very bad things to David, which would have been enough to distract David. He was talking about Goliath, but when his brother said what he said, what he could have done was forget about Goliath and start fighting with his brother. But we will see here that David remained focused on his target, which at this time was Goliath. So what he did, he avoided confrontation with his brother and still continued to talk about Goliath by moving away from that area where his brother was. Let us look at verses 28 to 30.
When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, He burned with anger at him and asked, "Why have you come down here? With whom do you leave these few sheep in the desert? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle." "Now what have I done?" said David. "Can't I even speak?"
Yes, that was the only reaction. David said, "What have I done? Can't I even speak?" And then he turned. I didn't put verse 30 is there, yes. He turned and went to another area.
He then turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter, and the men asked him as before, and the men answered him as before.
Yes. So his brother tried to redirect him, but in a very annoying way and very insulting way. He said very bad things. Remember, this is somebody that God had told us has the right heart. Remember, God said the reason he selected David is that he looked at David's heart. And he knows that we men look at outward appearances, but he looks at the heart. Meaning he looked at David's heart and found that it was the right heart. And now his brother is saying David had a conceited heart, that he was a wicked person. He only came there to watch battle. So this was, even though he was trying to redirect David from what he thought was a dangerous interest that David had developed, but he did it in a way that was an insult and could have distracted David, because he could have started sort of exchanging words with his brother. So he simply grumbled about it, said, "Now what have I done? Can't I speak?" But he moved away from there, went to another area, and started the same discussion. His focus was on seeing that something was done about Goliath, and he didn't want to be distracted by anything else. Well, the commander of the army was Saul, and so Saul, the information was brought to Saul about what this young man was saying. Enough people have had it and directed him to speak to Saul. So immediately he came to Saul. He said, "Look, let no one be discouraged by this Philistine. Let no one be discouraged," because he was really unhappy that the Israeli soldiers were frightened. They were discouraged. So the first thing he wanted was an exhortation, was to tell them, say, "Look, this man should not discourage us. We're going to do something about him." In fact, he didn't say we. He said, "I," meaning him, David. "I will fight him." Well, Saul looked at him and said, "You are a little boy. This man is a seasoned fighter. He's been in the army all his life. He has all kinds of experience with battles. There's no way I can send a small boy like you to confront him. You cannot do it." But he pressed on. He told Saul how he used his bare hands to kill a lion and a bear that attacked his sheep while he was in the desert tending the flock. And then he said, "The God that delivered me from the lion will deliver me from Goliath." What is happening here is, first, Saul didn't believe that this is even possible, that somebody like this can go fight Goliath. But David had to make a case. He recognized that if Saul didn't let him, there was nothing he could do, because Saul was the commander. He recognized Saul's authority. We will leave that recognition of authority for now, because we are going to see plenty of it in future Bible studies in this series. David had he recognized authority and had great respect for authority. So his intention then was to first convince Saul that he could fight this man. Even though Saul had no way at all of expecting that this young person can be sent to go and fight somebody like Goliath. But David convinced Saul. First of all, he had experience with dangerous fights. He fought off a lion. In fact, killed the lion with the bare hand. He fought off a bear and killed the bear with bare hands. Then he also appealed to his faith in God. He told Saul, said, God who delivered me from the lion and from the bear will deliver me from Goliath. And Saul was convinced. Let us read about this in verses 32 to 37.
David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a boy, and he has been fighting a man from his youth, and he has been a fighting man from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord has delivered me from the paw of the lion, and the paw of the bear. The bear will deliver me from the hands of this Philistine." Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you."
Yes, Saul was convinced by David. Two arguments that David used. One is that because Saul told him, "Oh, Goliath has a lot of experience. You're only a boy." So he told Saul that in fact he has a lot of experience, though not fighting human beings, but actually fighting something more dangerous than human beings. Then he also emphasized the fact that this is the army of the living God, and this man is a Philistine, and he has no place in insulting the army of the living God. Then he talked about his faith in God and said, "The Lord who delivered me, the Lord who guided me in these experiences that I described to you, one with a lion and another with a bear, that God will deliver me from the hand of this man." So with this kind of faith and with the experience that he has shown that he had, Saul was convinced, and Saul said, "Okay, go, and the Lord be with you." So Saul prayed for him, and now it's time for him to get ready and go fight Goliath. Well, Saul believed that the way to send him was to now dress him up as a soldier, the same way that Goliath was dressed up. He felt that David should have the same kind of protections that Goliath have, the same kind of weapons that Goliath have, because that's what he believed in. That's what he believed, that those are the things that they need to fight battle. David, being an obedient person, tried on the dressing, the special regalia and the equipment that they wanted him to carry. But these were too heavy for him. He was too clumsy. He could not perform in these things. And he also realized that these are not his source of strength. It was not these things that would help him fight Goliath. He had a different weapon, that his belief in God was what was going to help him fight Goliath. So he rejected the military regalia and decided to go into this battle as a shepherd boy, to go the way he is. That's really the significance of this, to go the way he is, with his faith in God and with his preparation, with the experience that he has had. He wasn't there as a member of the Israeli army. He was there as an Israeli that did not want to accept the insult that the army has accepted. So he wanted to go with that spirit and with that go himself Goliath the way that he is, without being dressed up as anything that he is not. Let us read about this 38 to 40.
Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around, because he was not used to them. I cannot go in these, he said to Saul, because I am not used to them. So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand, approached the Philistine.
He took his shepherd's staff, took his sling, chose 5 pieces of rock, 5 stones, and that was his weapon. And let us see what happens. Well, as soon as Goliath saw David, he was prepared for victory. He looked at David and just saw David with disdain. For him, it was even an insult that they are sending David to him. So he told David and said, "Look, do you think I'm a dog that you are coming to me with a stick and your sling? I'm going to pick you up and tear you up and feed your flesh to the birds and the beasts, because that's what you deserve." Goliath didn't really see a battle. He just saw that he was going to kill David. So that was his battle cry. Let's read about that. Verses 41 to 44.
Meanwhile, the Philistine, with a shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was only a boy, ruddy and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, "I am a dog.
Am I a dog
that you come with me? You come at me with sticks." And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field."
Yes, come here and I will tear you up and feed your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. Well, David started his own battle cry. And we'll spend some time learning this because this is really the lesson. His battle cry was a prayer, a rebuke of Goliath, and a statement, an explanation to the people around why he was going to kill Goliath. He wanted to pray, of course, but he realized that this was a battle, so this is not time to kneel down and pray. So he offered his prayer loud so everybody could hear him. And he also offered the prayer as a rebuke to Goliath. Say, "Look, you have defied the army of the living God. And today I'm going to strike you down and cut off your head so that the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. So that all the people gathered here will know that this God does not need spears and javelins and swords like you have." So he was doing 3 different things at the same time. He was praying, he was rebuking Goliath, then he was preaching a sermon to all the people around him. This is a special thing we need to know about David, that David worshipped God. He was a worshiper. And in fact, one of the reasons God chose him was because he worshipped God with all his heart. And every opportunity he had, and we'll see this in several lessons, every opportunity he had, he interacted with people in a way that will convey the image of God, that will tell them that he believes in God and he worships God. He of course prayed every opportunity he had, and he preached a sermon every opportunity he had. But all of these things were done in a way that still fitted naturally into the circumstances. Like if in this particular case, you will see he was preaching, but at the same time, that preach was his war cry. He was praying. At the same time, that prayer was his war cry. And of course, because it was his war cry, he was directing it to the person he was going to fight, Goliath, but he was directing it to everybody, to the whole world. In fact, including those of us that are reading this today. It was as if he knew that what he was doing was of historical significance, and that people in generations to come, that is us and people that will come after us, would like to know what happened here. Let us read this and we'll continue talking about it. Verse 45.
Verse 45. David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with the sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. Today I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that this is not a sword or a spear that the Lord saves. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." This is not by the sword or spear.
Yeah, he said, it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. So, remember, he was talking to Goliath. So he was telling him how he was going to fight him, was telling him why he was going to kill him, and he was telling him how he was going to kill him. But he didn't stop there. He was also talking to God. Say, look, this is your battle. This man has defied you. This man, I want to kill this man so that the whole world will know that Israel worships you and that you protect the people that worship you. And I want all those gathered here to know that the sword and spear and these weapons that this man has mean nothing, because the Lord doesn't need those weapons. The Lord has his own ways of saving. This is the battle. So it's like saying, Father, this is your battle. Fight it for me. So this is in fact one of the classic prayers in the Bible. And we will go through this carefully, because there is a spiritual basis for this type of prayer. He was reminding God of something very important. Of course, by reminding God, God doesn't need to be reminded, but by reminding God, what he was doing was talking up his own faith. He was strengthening his faith. Say, here is a reason why God will help me kill this man. Because I want the whole world to know that the people of Israel worship God. I want all those gathered here to know about God and to know that he doesn't need this kind of weapons to fight. Well, let us look at this in more detail. What is the spiritual basis? Remember, God created human beings in his image. These were the first lessons we had in this our Bible study series, in the Banking Blessing series. God, under the Bible study titled Image of God, we learned that God created people in his image. And then he gave them unlimited authority. And we studied this under fill the earth and subdue it. He gave us human beings unlimited authority to rule over the world, rule over the earth, rule over the living and non-living things of the earth. Essentially, to do anything. Unlimited authority. We can do anything. But there is one condition. Since we are created in his image, whatever we do must convey his image to all those that are affected or are observers. Whatever you do must convey the image of God. And if it conveys the image of God, then it is authorized by God. You've been given the authority to do it. So, if you are contemplating an action, one of the things you do is to help you determine whether God has authorized you to take this action, is to ask yourself, how does this action convey the image of God to the people that will be affected, to the people that will observe it? And that is what David was doing. He said, the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. The whole world will know that the people of Israel worship a God that protects them. And this God doesn't need these kind of weapons we use. He doesn't need them to fight. So he was saying, look, I'm in this battle to let the world know about God. To let the world know that if you worship God, God will fight for you. Because God is going to fight for me today. So David made this statement of purpose deliberately. I don't know whether he thought about it before he went, but his was a spontaneous worshiper, somebody that really immersed himself in worshiping God and understood how God wanted us to interact with him and to interact with other human beings. He understood that if he made a case, a successful case, that what he was going to do, that killing Goliath will serve God's purpose, that killing Goliath will convey God's image to people, that if he made a case, a successful case to God, then God will fight for him. Well, as I said, God doesn't need you to make a case to him. But the reason you make that case is to convince yourself, is to strengthen your faith, is to know that what you are about to do is founded in the purpose for which God created you. So David was telling himself, telling Goliath, telling God, telling all of the people around him that the reason he was going to kill Goliath was so that the whole world will know that if you worship God, then God will fight for you. This was his battle cry. Well, let us go to the battle cry again, but this time translated. David's battle cry translated. I'm just simply going to read it. It says, I stand on solid ground. The Almighty God is with me. Because you defied God, I will strike you down and cut off your head. The whole world will know that Israel worships God that fights for his people. This is key. That worships God that fights for his people. If you worship God, God will fight for you. Those gathered here will know our God better. So this is my purpose, Father, and this is why I'm here, to strike this man down and cut off his head. Then he did exactly that. He struck Goliath down with the sling stone. And I want us to think about this a little bit. This is the story is that the account says that the stone sank into Goliath's forehead. It's a stone in a sling. There is no way a human being can generate enough velocity to make that piece of stone sink into somebody's forehead. You can bruise the person and maybe knock out the person, make the person dizzy for a while. But that's all you can do. You cannot generate enough velocity to convert, to give a piece of stone enough momentum to sink into somebody's forehead. That is not possible, except with God. In this case, what happened was that God took over. God took over. And yes, David killed Goliath, but it was an act of God. The stone sank into his forehead because God had given it the right sharpness, the right velocity, the right weight. It's only bullets that sink into people's body, and even at that, they have to be fired from a gun. If you take a bullet and throw it at somebody, it will bounce off. Let us read about this, verses 48 and 50. 48 to 50.
As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag, taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him.
Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. So he quickly ran, stood over him, pulled his sword, because he didn't have his own sword. He pulled the Philistine's sword and used that sword to cut off his head. So David did exactly what he said he was going to do. I will strike you down and cut off your head. He struck the man down, and he went and used his sword to cut off his head. Of course, when the Philistine army saw this, they ran, they scattered. Their champion had been killed. They relied on him for 40 days. He terrorized the army of Israel. So they were coming in his shadow. As soon as they saw this, they ran. And the Israelites pursued them and destroyed them, killed several of them. David took Goliath's head and his weapon back to Jerusalem. And when at the end of the battle, Saul actually did not recognize David. So he asked who David was. Remember, David was already working for him, playing harp, but he didn't recognize him. Let us read about that, verses 51 to 58.
David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the scabbard. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that the hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Their dead were strewn along the Shiram road to Gath and Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camp. David took the Philistine's head and brought it to Jerusalem, and he put the Philistine's weapons in his own tent. As Saul watched David going out to meet the Philistine, he said to Abner, the commander of the army, "Abner, whose son is that young man?" Abner replied, "As surely as you live, O king, I don't know." The king said, "Find out whose son is this young man is." As soon as David returned from killing the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul, with David still holding the Philistine's head. "Whose son are you, young man?" Saul asked him. David said, "I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem."
"I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem." So David had killed Goliath, but we recognize that killing Goliath was an act of God, because the weapon he used could not ordinarily have been adequate to kill somebody. You can strike somebody with, and this was not a big stone. Yeah, granted, he had a sling that helped him generate enough velocity, but that could only be enough to maybe knock somebody unconscious for a while. But he killed this man because the stone sank into his forehead. God used this event to send a message. To send a message that if you worship God, then God will fight for you. It doesn't matter what your battle is. If you worship God, believe in Him, and have faith in Him, God will fight for you. That, I think, is a powerful message, and showing Christ told us in John 14:14 that you may ask me for anything in my name and I will do it. There are two key phrases here. One of them is the word anything. You may ask me for anything and I will do it. Then there is a modifier that says in my name. What does asking in my name mean? Asking in my name, asking in the name of God, means asking for something that will convey the image of God to all that could be affected, to all that could observe. Asking for something that will fulfill God's purpose. If that is what you are asking, if you can show yourself that what you are asking for qualifies, satisfies these conditions, then have faith in God that He is going to do it, because that's what He said. There was no, this is the entire verse from John 14:14, and even though one taking verses in isolation at times can be deceiving, but you can read the entire chapter 14 and you see that the message was about this. He said, you can ask me, this is Christ talking, you can ask me for anything in my name and I will do it. You can ask me for anything and I will do it. But there is one condition. You have to ask for something that conveys the image of God. And that's what he meant by in my name. So this is what David did. He showed that what he was asking God at that moment will convey the image of God to the people, to the whole world. The whole world will know that God fights for those that worship Him. He said there is a God in Israel, but that's the meaning he was conveying, is that the God that Israel worshipped fights for them. The whole world will know. So Christ told us several generations later, explained to us what David was telling us through his encounter with Goliath. So today we learned that David was spiritually close to God. Remember, the purpose of this series is to find out what God saw in the heart of David. So we'll see a glimpse into the heart of David, into David's interaction with people and his interaction with God. He was spiritually close to God, and he understands God's purpose for humans. He understands why God created people and what he wanted people to do for him, how he wanted people to interact with each other, and how he wanted people to interact with him. David applies this understanding in his interactions with other human beings. The interaction, the encounter with Goliath could not say more. Because, I mean, if he was just depending on his strength and all that, he would not have God to start with, because he was too small compared to the kind of people that should go and fight Goliath. David was highly patriotic of his country, but his patriotism is not just that nationalistic thing. It is part of it, but it is that belief that there is a special relationship between God and Israel. So his patriotism for Israel derives more from his belief in God and his belief that God has a special relationship with Israel. Go see any question I was asking.
No, I think you covered everything quite well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I thank God for that. I thank God for all those that will look at the videos or listen to the audio of this Bible study. I hope that this interaction between David and Goliath will be one that everybody can learn and get God's message from it in a way that will make a positive impact on your life and bring you closer to God's purpose. Thank you, and God bless you.